Hey everyone, you're now listening to Cup of Queens with Paige and Saray, and we're so excited to have Tara Brandner, the owner and founder of Tara B Fertility. Tara is a passionate advocate for women struggling with infertility.
Going through infertility herself, Tara shares with us her powerful story, how she found support and realized it was time to be her own health advocate along with her now patients. Tara gives us resources for both men and women experience infertility and how to bring educating yourself to the forefront of the conversation.
So grab your cup and enjoy.
Hi.
Hello.
Look at you two cuties, all cute stuff and stuff.
Hey. Oh, how are you?
I'm good. I love these questions. I was just looking at them again. I'm like, they're perfect.
Hey.
Good.
We're so excited to get the answers.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. The one and only way, that way.
Exactly.
Jump right in. And so,
Yeah.
Well, tell us everything. Tell us about yourself, your business, how it started, kind of the background.
Yeah. So my journey starts from being an entrepreneur, goes all the way back to my own personal journey through infertility as a healthcare provider. I always like to put that in there because I feel like I had a magnifying glass or like a different view going through this whole journey. And it started with us trying to conceive on our own and having a miscarriage in there. And it was right then and there. I was like, wait a minute, like, I know this can happen, right? But like, why? And there was never an answer really why. There was one in my family that had it. And why was it taking us? Because at that point, it was like 8 months of trying. And I was like, what is going on here? Like something just isn't adding up, but I'm doing the whole, try for a year, even though something doesn't feel right, not listening to my body, that kind of thing. And so 2 more months went on and I reached out. It wasn't my primary OB in that clinic. It was another colleague and they were not friendly. They were not receptive when I kind of said, hey, okay, like this is 2 months after miscarriage. We're pretty much at a year now. I do live in rural North Dakota. And so there's some travel that's involved. I know that, well aware of that.
Yeah.
And so she had kind of thrown back in my face, like, well, you do know you're going to have to travel if you want any further, workup, treatment or anything done. I'm like, yep, well aware. And so I got this like pushback right away. Tried again for about another month. Nothing happened. And I finally reached out in tears to my OB, who was amazing. And she's like, we're done here. I'm sending you on to reproductive endocrinology. And that started our journey like through with the initial diagnosis of unexplained, which was a huge trigger for me because I can't like give anybody the diagnosis of unexplained something. Like, how do you just have no answer for something?
Yeah,
like,
right.
really nothing? You're just going to spaghetti on the wall this, see what we do here and just see what we can cook up and try it.
Yeah.
And so mind you, we did 3 rounds of IUI or intrauterine insemination, and I hadn't told anybody what we were going through. And I was not even the miscarriage. I was quiet about it. And it wasn't until I almost was like forced or had to tell what I was going through because of my work schedule. Because I do like call rotations and I had to be gone on certain days with cycle and treatment. I was kind of like, okay, I cannot work this day. Absolutely cannot. Like, and I'm sorry, you don't have anybody, but I cannot be here. And that was when I had to tell somebody, what was going on. And then after our 3rd round failed, we took a break. We were just exhausted. And we had met a family friend and talked more about, they work in a fertility clinic as an embryologist in a different state and got this whole new perspective and view on fertility and next steps and IVF being the next step and route more than likely for us. And we decided to switch clinics. And for multiple reasons, but success rates were one of them. Like I figured if I'm going to do this, I don't want to do it more than one time. I don't care if I have to travel. Let's do it right the first time. And so we had 2 embryos that we transferred and we have a healthy 4-year-old now. So one embryo made it and one embryo didn't. And there was this whole level of like grieving that kind of went along with that and confusion. And then came pregnancy after infertility, which is a whole new level of emotional mess. Like anxiety and fear, and you want to be happy, and then you're mad because you're not happy, and just kind of all of these kind of things go through your head. And then I had a bleed at 32 weeks and I was helicoptered out.
Oh my God.
It's like it didn't end. Like it just never ended.
Yeah.
And fortunately, everything was fine. I spent a few nights in the hospital, but I had to live away from home and stay in the town where my OB was located for 4 weeks. I got to come home for day trips to get some clothes, but had to like go right back. And so we had an emergency C-section and everything is fine, but it was just like all of this like mental health and emotional wellness and like trauma. It was like trauma, one thing after another. And most of it was with little to no support, little to no resources. And after I was holding my son at 6 weeks old, I was like, what did we just go through? We had no insurance benefits for infertility treatment, none. Like $35,000 out of pocket, even though we have insurance premiums, pay in, all the things, even though it's a disease, no coverage.
Wow.
And that was where my advocacy and road to making change kind of happened. It started with me initiating legislation in 2019 to mandate insurance coverage for infertility and fertility preservation, which is like 90% of the time cancer patients. And then came the nonprofit. So Everlasting Hope came shortly after because I realized there's no organization to provide support or information or anything on infertility in the state. And so it's the first and only nonprofit for infertility in North Dakota and South Dakota. And then about a year and a half ago came the business piece of it, where I was just like, I need to be doing more. I can offer more. I can be doing more for people. What does that look like? And first came the fertility coaching business, which is worldwide. I have patients all over that I work with. And then came the really niche telemedicine business, which is a tri-state business. I can take insurance. I can actually work and act as a nurse practitioner in that role. The coaching is more of a coach and a friend. And then the telemedicine is where I can order, treat, diagnose, and kind of use my full scope of practice to really dive in and help people more, actually utilize insurance for them. I work with their symptoms and diseases that are causing the infertility, and then work beside them if they're doing treatments and other things like that. So it came from just seeing a mess, and just lack of support, lack of resources, and saying, what can I do? And then it was like, what can I do next? What else is missing here? How can I use my education to help people more too?
Mm-hmm. Gosh, but what an incredible thing to come out of your, struggle. Because now I'm sure you help so many women and they can relate. And I can't even imagine. But going back to, you said IVF and IVU, is that correct? I've never heard.
Yeah, I know. I always don't know if I should use abbreviation. So IUI is intrauterine insemination. Okay. And that is, if do you want me to get real technical on what that is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's where they just basically take they time your release of your egg to a specific time with medication and a shot. And then they take male sperm, clean it, make it all beautiful, and go past the cervix and directly get it closer to the fallopian tubes, basically. Okay. And then IVF is in vitro fertilization. And that's where they actually take egg, take sperm, and magically put it together, make an embryo, grow it out some magical way to a certain day, certain level, grade it, make sure the genetics are good with it. And then most nowadays will do freeze, where they freeze them. And then you kind of let your body come off of all those hormones and reset, start some different hormones, and go back and prepare for the transfer, where they just take the embryo at 5-6 days old type of thing and directly put embryo back into you.
Wow.
So really crazy as you think about the magic of creating life when there's a disease that's impairing that from happening.
Yeah, it is absolutely crazy, but it's
incredible though.
Incredible, so fascinating.
Yeah, it's a whole new, even as like, once again, like as a medical person going through it, like it was just fascinating to learn that whole side of, we did genetic testing as individuals to see what we carry, so there's a whole genetic component. You want to rule that kind of thing out. And there's many that have to go through IVF because they're both carriers of very harmful genetic diseases. So by doing IVF, you can skip the gene and like eliminate that disease from happening in your children. And that happens right here in North Dakota. Like, and so, yeah, it's just fascinating, like why, or with individuals, like I work with several women who were born with genetic diseases like a Turner syndrome. So they literally physically have never created an egg because of their disease. And so they have the ability to use like donor eggs, or men, if they've went through something, they can do donor sperm and kind of just do things like that. So they still can create life and have a family of their own.
Incredible.
Yes.
There's so much like technicality that goes along with that I had no idea. So it's really interesting to hear directly from you who experienced that and, helping your patients alongside. So, when you talked about at the end, when you were able to get home and you had access to a lot more resources and support and, essentially kind of, I don't want to say getting back on your feet, but, getting back to yourself, what did that look like for you? And how were you able to, I guess, kind of get back to you?
Yeah, that is an amazing question, because you nailed it. You are not you when you're going through this. This is like a full-time job. Mm-hmm. It is like the fourth leading cause of trauma in women. Like 61% of women don't tell their friends and family they're going through this even. And so there's like a stigma that kind of hangs with it. You don't want people to be, insensitive with comments or things. So it's easier if you don't tell them what you're going through, or don't share every aspect of your journey with them. You stop planning trips and vacations because you don't know when treatment's going to be, shots are going to be, things like that. Mm-hmm. You maybe stop going to events where there's kids. You stop going to baby showers for sure. Mm-hmm. And if you do go to one, you're probably going to cry after at it or something like that. Like, it's just, there's triggers everywhere that never used to be triggers before. And most of the time they still kind of hang out afterwards. I mean, there's still things. I have a 4-year-old that will trigger me at times. And so I remember that day specifically. I specifically remember he was 6 weeks old, and I like just cried. I was like, oh my God, I'm so like hormonal right now. But it was more like this, like it was like, what just happened to me? But what are others going through? Like, if I went through this, and I mean, I'm like, in the medical field, I can kind of handle some of this more than others. Like, what are some of those that feel suppressed, or like are scared to speak up, or don't have the money? Because cost is the number one barrier to care. So people aren't even able to seek treatments right off the bat because there's no insurance coverage. It's like a healthcare disparity. You don't have the money. Sorry, have a nice day. Like, that shouldn't be, when this is literally a disease. Like, it's the only disease, in fact, that insurance does not cover. The only one. It's like, if you look in your like insurance premium information, it'll say services not covered, plastic surgery, non-FDA approved medical devices or medications, infertility treatment.
Really?
Like, literally the things not covered. It's like
my mind.
Mind blowing. And yet it's like categorized by all these organizations that do the categorizing like as a disease. So it's just something that I was like, okay. In the midst of my journey, I completed a month-long health policy fellowship with the American Association of Nurse Practitioners. So I do a lot of advocacy work for nurse practitioners, federally, state level, all that kind of thing. And so I didn't realize at the time how much that would benefit and give me some background information, knowledge, how to pursue legislation. But I always like to tell people, the only thing you need to know when it comes time to advocacy, when you see call to actions, is a story. And that story might be a few sentences. It might be a paragraph. It might be 5 pages. You need to know nothing else about the how to or what's going on. It's literally just stepping up when you're comfortable, or on behalf of somebody, a friend, a family worker, coworker, family member, and speaking up for them is so powerful. So powerful when they hear it directly from someone that lives in their district, or better yet, an employer, because that they can make the change too. So a lot of what we do at Everlasting Hope is work with employers to change the, hey, when it's enrollment time, can you really consider, looking into adding infertility benefits? In fact, it's cost savings. There's been studies done to show this is cost savings. You have employee retention. It makes your work environment a better place to be, and just all these things too. And so it really was one of those things where it's like, okay, time to go back into doing the work that I love, which was advocacy work for nurse practitioners, but flipping that and bringing it home a little bit to something personal I had went through.
Yeah,
Gosh, that is
Wow.
incredible.
It
And I
is.
mean, how many different facets of this that you have really tackled. I think it's so cool. And I want to go back to, the coaching side of things, because I think that's really where our listeners are going to be able to just get as much information from you as we possibly can to do exactly what you're doing, share the message, and, help those women advocate for themselves or families advocate for themselves. So when you're going through a coaching process, I mean, what does that typically look like? What are some of the common, scenarios that get brought to you, or maybe even common, misconceptions that get brought to you? What are those conversations?
Oh, that's a great question. So the misconceptions, I would say, I don't know if it's really, we'll pretend it's a misconception. So that they have had every test done, everything's been ruled out, and nothing's wrong. I go a level deeper usually with a lot of my testing. One of the first things I do is like analyze and assess everything they've been through, especially if they're coming to me on telemedicine, which is coaching. They're both coaching. It's just a different style due to license and stuff like that I run it. But especially if they're coming to me locally, I'm able to look at their medical records and see if there's pieces missing. I have some advanced training from ASRM, which is the Advanced Society for Reproductive Medicine. I do some Marquette. I've read and done a lot of studying on another side of fertility that's like immune therapy. So like where there's some possible autoimmune stuff going on, and kind of change some treatments, especially for miscarriage. Also, when women come to me like, I was told I have to wait till I have another miscarriage. I say, no, stop right there. Let's dig in and get started on figuring out why this is happening. Run some more testing. Consider this medication and this medication we're going to bring on board. And so I really look high level what they've been through. I listen. And the cool thing about having my own practice, I'm not working for a big corporation that's forcing patients, every 15 to 20 minutes. I'm able to spend 45, 60 plus minutes with my patients. Their first visit, they get a PowerPoint. I educate them. Like the one thing I think that it's missing is education. They're going to walk away with that first session being heard. They're going to have education. We're going to go over like, what is weighing on you? What is like right now, like what is on your mind? Anything? Is there something that like has been dismissed before that intuitively just doesn't feel right with you? Like, what do you think's going on? What is a symptom that you've brought up, or symptoms that you don't think has been looked at deep enough or has been overlooked? And then we go through what I feel is like a fertility lifestyle, just basic things men and women together can change to better improve their fertility from a lifestyle standpoint. And then we create goals together. So they'll walk away, this is on the first visit, with a whole set of goals that are attainable, they're individualized for them, and they're comfortable. They're not these, another example is like not everyone needs a 12-week eating program. That's overwhelming for some, and then there's the next one that needs that. And so it's like really figuring out what are the next steps in order for them to feel confident moving forward with whatever treatment, or maybe they're not doing it, they're just trying naturally. So if they're just in the beginning stages of conception or they failed treatments, what are we going to do next to make them comfortable with it? Or are we kind of looking at what else is going on? Do we need to tweak some dials before we go forward with anything? So it's a really high level. And like I said, it's a 45 to 60-minute session right off the bat that I'm able to offer them.
That's awesome. I love that you're able, obviously, but to customize it from start to finish for each individual client.
Yes.
And so, because how long have you been doing this?
I've been a nurse practitioner for 10 years.
Okay.
And I've been in this field, like the fertility space, for about 2 years now.
Okay. So you've seen a ton and you've worked with a lot of women and families.
Oh, yes.
So I'm so interested and curious to know like a couple or, your favorite success story. What is that? I'm sure it's just.
Oh, okay. I have two. I have two right now, but my top one that's still in the forefront of my mind is an individual who went through 11 miscarriages, got a surrogate. So she has a little one through surrogacy, got pregnant again naturally, not trying, and had done all of this research. So fertility patients, the one thing that they know about themselves and that we all know about each other is we are researchers. Mm-hmm. We know more than the average person that has a disease of whatever, diabetes, heart disease. No, reproductive patients know more about the latest and treatments and protocols and medications and research. Like they are very well versed and educated. Mm-hmm. This patient is that person. And she had information on an autoimmune protocol because she believed that she couldn't get to this. So there's a certain provider, there's a couple providers in the country that do this really in-depth autoimmune work. And it's like a 6-month wait. And it's expensive. And you just get exhausted after going through everything. And she just didn't get there. But she had done the research and knew kind of what was going on there. And there's some books and some research articles she had. And she came to me. OB and reproductive endocrinology they were not comfortable putting her on a medication called prednisone. And because it has some risks during pregnancy, they put her on 2 of them. And she's like, will you do this for me? Did the research. We discussed the risks and benefits. I said, absolutely. Let's do this. You acknowledge it. I'm willing to be that person, to step out and do it. And we kind of put some other things into place and, worked on this together. And she is healthy, 17 weeks pregnant, the furthest she's ever been right now. And so granted, we're still a ways out. She just is so thankful that I was willing to hear her, read the research that's outside of the norm, and go from there. And I also have another patient that's pregnant after failing 3 rounds of IVF. And so it's just kind of, working with them, doing some tweaks. I have patients that are currently doing IVF. They weren't able to, they were told, go lose weight, you'll get pregnant. Well, that's just when I just cringe when I hear that, okay, you're not going to, first of all, let's pretend they do have to lose weight. Not going to help them. We adjusted things to her hormone levels. We adjusted the right supplements based on her, testing that we did. And she lost 50 pounds in 6 months and is, just a healthier person overall as she's starting to move into her treatment. And so there's just all different entry points of women. Some are not even, they come to me like, I don't have infertility, but I want to start this out right. I want to work on this before I'm even trying to conceive. And they don't want, to be placed on certain prescription medications that are being offered to them. They kind of want to, what else is going on? What else can I do instead of a prescription medication? So there's all different entry points that I kind of work with, including college girls, with PCOS, women with endometriosis and awful periods. And just, I take a different approach. I kind of combine 2 different sides of medicine and see what the patient's comfortable with and work and try to figure out what's going on at the root cause level.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's so cool. Yeah. I like what you said about changing the lifestyle of the couple that you've worked with before. And I think it would be so interesting to hear maybe some of those. And I know that it's so different for every single person. So by no means are we saying this is, the fit for everybody, but what are some of the common things that you see, whether it's supplements or, diets, whatever it is, what are some common things that you think do help set people up for success before they run into any issues?
Yes. So testing, I see so many women that have undiagnosed, overlooked PCOS. So polycystic ovarian syndrome is one. You got the acne, hair loss. Some will be really lean or teeny. The next will be I was in college, I was an athlete and I gained 30 pounds, this inability to lose weight, mood fluctuations. And it's they'll go into a provider. It actually has been researched. It takes about 2 to 3 providers and the patient bringing forward, I think I have PCOS before it gets diagnosed. Endometriosis takes 7 to 12 years to get diagnosed, and so it's I just sit back and I'm yeah, you have PCOS. Here's what we're going to do. And there's certain supplements, one of them being myo-inositol, has been studied and researched against the prescription medication of metformin for PCOS. and it's been shown to be superior.
Really?
Like I put them on a couple basic like PCOS supplements, NAC and acetylcysteine, both. Like, and they're like, I got my period for the first time in like 6 months. And I'm like, and we work with how to eat for insulin resistance, making sure you're eating protein with every meal, making sure you're eating every 3 hours. Like it's basic stuff. Focus on strength training. Don't do so much HIIT. It's finding that right dial, like to dial in with them and to stay with them closely for a while. And it's like, oh, weird. There's my hormones fluctuate. And it's, simple things like that, and some of them too need, the men, it's, this is part 50-50, it takes two to make a baby too. Like I kind of said earlier. And so I think as a female, so much gets placed on us. So oftentimes I'm like, hey, can you get you both are going to buy a pill planner. Pill planners are cool. I'm going to bring them back. We're going to make these things cute and neat again, not just grandma's things, and we're both going to do some basic fertility supplements. We're both going to do like a prenatal. We're both going to do, some fish oil and vitamin D and all of those basic things. And then we're both going to eat healthy. We're going to cut out, some processed food. We're going to, dial in on adding more berries and, greens and things like that. Can you guys maybe cook some meals together to make it a couples thing? Try to bring back that, like, make it a couples thing too, because we're in such a hard place, going through this, and communication and relationships can get kind of I don't want to say like dismantled, but you can kind of grow apart really easily when you're going through this. So let's try to find things to like do together again. Like, do you like exercising together? Go on walks together? Like just things that are basic, but have even shown in men to improve fertility is basic exercise. Basic things like that, and getting them on some supplements too. And so really trying to make it about them together, so it's not so heavy just on one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Yeah, definitely takes two.
I didn't
even think about it.
No, especially when you say like prenatal for men, I'm like, what? Like,
yeah, there's like conception. They have men conception supplements that have like, there's a couple of handful of supplements that are known to improve sperm, whether they need it or not, and prenatal for a male, or a multivitamin, I should say, like for a male. But I always say, make sure it has folate. I'm not a big folic acid fan. I will argue with somebody day and night over that. Make sure it's folate for both men and women, and just be done with it. And so that is a big thing I usually tell couples if they're looking at supplements right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Interesting. I think that's going to be really interesting for everybody to hear, just, for their own sake. But are there any other like resources or books or different, tips that you recommend for your clients?
So I do have, I have some of my favorite books. I just like saved them on my website, but podcasts, like there's so many good podcasts out there. And if you're driving to an appointment, like not everybody probably lives in a city where they're, going to treatments, but if you're going to treatments, find some podcasts that you can listen to together. I like meditations too. There's a lot of fertility, like Circle and Bloom is a company that has fertility specific or miscarriage specific meditations. There's a lot of studies that back mind, body, connection, things like that to kind of help with that emotional piece of it when we're going through it. A big tip I have is really like I want to shout it from a mountaintop is if you feel intuitively, we'll call it, right? Like something isn't right. It's just like nagging at you and it keeps coming to you. And you've been turned down by 1 doctor, 2 doctors, 5 doctors. Find someone who will listen to you. Find a healthcare provider who is going to acknowledge your concern. Do a full workup on it, because chances are you probably already know what that workup is, because we're researchers as patients. So like, make sure you feel heard in your office. You don't feel dismissed, that you're comfortable with your healthcare provider. The communication within the clinic is flowing well. You're not like waiting days to hear back on a question. And it's really like things like that can make, women's health in general, not just fertility care, but women's health better. If you're being met with a provider who is shaming you, and because that just happened last week to a patient of mine, my whole goal is to create a multidisciplinary team for my patients. So that might look like chiropractor, physical therapist, mental health counselor, your OBGYN, your family practice, and me. Like, it's creating a team, and the patient gets to do that themselves. And if I find someone should be part of their team, I'll recommend or suggest, hey, let's bring in, this person or that person to the team, and really provide this all-inclusive approach to their reproductive or women's health care as well. But a patient was met with total resistance and literally was fat shamed in her OBGYN office. And it was just like, it's 2022. How is this still happening? Like, how are you not cognitive of the words that are coming out of your mouth to this poor person who is starting IVF treatments? And so it's just things like that. Like, we're done. Like, she came to me, I'm like, we are done. I am finding you a new OB. End of discussion. And oh, by the way, let me write her name down so I make sure no one else goes down. Holy smokes.
That's so sad.
So I like to empower patients that they hire and fire the other healthcare provider. You do not owe your healthcare provider anything. You're not going to see him at Christmas. I hope not. Maybe someday. You're not going to see him at the parade, or you might see him at the social event. Just walk by him. You hire them. You get to hire them. They do not control you. You know your body better than anybody else does. Listen to that when something is telling you something isn't right. Something isn't right. Something isn't right. And like I said, keep reaching out, find some support, find some people that have been going through, and find somebody who does get it, understands it, and listens to you and hears you out.
Mm-hmm. Gosh. Yeah.
That's great.
That is it's really so great. Inspiring to hear just how you're fighting for so many women to get what they deserve. And something that I love that, you're talking about is just the support that you have for your clients. And, we've talked a lot about kind of those beginning stages of, trying to conceive, but I also think of women who, do conceive, and then you still have that full journey that I'm sure is terrifying, especially if you have, gone through a miscarriage or whatever it might be. What can you speak on to kind of the process to just mentally get your clients through, that challenge of just get to the next week?
Yep. A lot of what I offer on both ends of my both businesses is open inbox, open communication. And once again, I know that not everyone can do that, but yet you should. If you work for a big facility, you should have a nurse. That's that person, So I always make sure that they do you have any more questions? Is there really anything, you guys? And every time my emails do just say, please let me know if you have any more questions. Please don't hesitate to ask your questions. No questions silly, because they've been suppressed to some extent for so long that they're scared or hesitant to reach out. So it's almost make it, you guys drop it anytime. I don't care if it's 2 a.m. If you're going to go Google something, you better be writing me first, and then you can go Google it. That's kind of my rule. You're going to go to Dr. Google, you're going to go to Dr. Brandner first too. Make sure so I can offset what you're being told. And so really just giving them a safe place, especially on the coaching side of it. I use an app where they can walkie-talkie me, or they can type or send pictures. Cool. Anytime. I will respond to it, within multiple times a day. It's not a day that goes by that I'm not in there multiple times responding back, but it's giving them a safe place. We'll end up venting about oh my God, my mom said this to me, or my spouse said this. So we'll get on some tangent that is a trigger, or things like that too. So it's not always about the medical stuff. It's really supporting that emotional wellness. Do we need to find them a support group? Everlasting Hope hosts one. There's a couple other ones out there. Maybe find them that. I have connected individual people. An example would be, hey, we failed treatment and we're probably going to be childless. Do you know anybody else? Yep, I'll connect you. Do you know anybody else who's going through NAPRO or the Creighton method? Yep, let me connect you. And so I'm doing a lot of connecting too with other patients that are really willing to, they long for the one thing I wanted when I started the nonprofit, was to go have a cup of coffee with somebody locally who gets it. Loved the Instagram support. It was great. I still talk to those people to this day, but I really just wanted to like hug somebody and have a coffee. And that's one thing through the nonprofit and business I'm able to do too, is connect people, to meet up with them. I've met up with, patients too. We've become friends and just really have that personal connection, because it's really what's needed when you're going through loss and, wanting to have a baby. The one thing your body is supposed to do as a female, and it's not doing, is really mentally draining. And so it's just the infertility community is a really close-knit group of people. And it's the one thing that I like to incorporate into the business and the nonprofit too.
Mm-hmm. So
Wow.
cool.
That's awesome.
All the connections that you can make.
Mm-hmm.
It's
incredible.
I have one more that you kind of started to talk about it, but I do think this is such a big part. What can people in somebody's life who is trying to conceive and who is struggling, what can they do to be supportive? I mean, I do think of how much, pressure falls on, the woman in the relationship. So not only what can their spouse or significant other can do, but what about your family and friends? Because sometimes it's hard to know what to say in those situations.
That is an amazing question. Here's what I say to that. Simply say, how are you? What can I do for you? Are you doing okay? Versus the thing that we always talk about in the fertility community is like unsolicited advice or suggestions, or like almost like treatment methods. Like, hey, my one friend, did this. Did you try that? Guarantee we've put our legs in the air. We've went and got drunk. We've went on vacation. None of the relaxing, none of it works. And to never offer adoption as a solution. Like, well, have you thought about adoption? My message to that is, it's not our job as the infertiles with a disease to adopt. Like, that's a gift anybody and everybody can do, whether you have 4 kids of your own or you have no kids at all because of infertility. Mm-hmm. It's very expensive. It's not guaranteed. And there's a lot of emotional mess that can go on with that side of it too. It's a beautiful gift, I say, that anybody can do. So it really, really is hurtful when people throw, those kinds of comments out there. We all know somebody that's, adopted because of infertility, but that doesn't mean it's right for everybody, or that we shouldn't get a chance to treat our disease because of cost, or have our own chance to have our own biological child because of a disease has a barrier of cost. Mm-hmm. And so it's checking in on them, sending a text message. Hey, I'm just thinking of you, little heart emoji. Mm-hmm. A big thing for miscarriage is to really treat it like a loss. Treat it as if somebody died, because a baby technically did die. And so even though we don't have that physical, visual, we didn't know them, that female is going through a very, very, very hard time. It is grief that she is going through. And so some may individually process that differently and faster. And the next person might be going months and years and they're still grieving, that miscarriage. Send a card, once again, a text message, take them a meal over, same with the failed treatment, failed IUI or IVF or embryo didn't make it, that was a hope, a dream, a wish. That was a baby, in our minds. It was a lot of things. It wasn't just like, oh, another day at the clinic and it didn't work. There are studies that show going through infertility treatment is just as stressful as cancer. And it's just when you have a loss, it's just as hard on you grief-wise as losing a parent. So there's all these studies that like back the mental health and the emotional side of it. So to really just kind of shift and reframe maybe how you're viewing it and how you approach it, and just saying, just checking in. How are you? What can I do for you? I just want you to know I'm here for you, and that is enough sometimes, to like move mountains for that person. Hey, wow, they thought of me. They actually acknowledge this, and to just be there for them.
Yeah. I think that's really important to remember in really any area of your life, is to ask somebody, how are you? How are you?
Yes.
Rather than just, like you said, giving advice, because people just want to be heard and feel important, so I really love that you said that. And so one question that we always try to ask our guests, and especially this episode, we talked all about females. And so we're curious what a queen means to you, or is there a situation where you witnessed, someone being a queen?
Yes. So I think my queens, I have multiple queens, is just the whole fertility community, the 1 in 8. They're all queens, right? Like you're all going through a hard time, especially those that are in a place where they can talk and share about their story, because that's not everybody either. But I've seen some amazing healing happen from those who have stepped forward and actually shared for the first time. It's super hard. Even if it's with one person, it is one of the scariest things to do, is to step forward and just say, I'm going through infertility. I had miscarriage or multiple miscarriages. Those women are queens, because it truly does take a lot to do that. Mm-hmm. So especially just thinking of, and miscarriage is 1 in 4, infertility is 1 in 8. Those are my queens.
Yes. I love that.
It.
Yes.
Anyone who's brave enough to, just raise their hand and say, I'm there with you. I think that's so important.
Yes.
And I know that after everybody hears all this, they're going to want to be where you're at. They want to know the information. So tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can connect.
Yeah. So I would say my inbox is always open. And so Instagram is where I hang out the most, at Tara B Fertility. My website is tarabfertility.com, and I have a little chat box on there. They can connect with me on there too. I do have a weekly podcast. They're super short. I try to just throw some education or inspiration out on there every week. That's Hopeful Hints, and Infertility Podcast. I've tried to post on my website too freebies. I have a bunch of downloadables, blogs, try to put some education out there from a reliable source that's, has education and the experience, been there, done that, with you guys, to put some information out there too. So to just come say hi, you're never alone. It's a safe place in my inbox. Just drop in, say hi, and know once again that you're just not alone.
Mm-hmm. That was awesome.
Incredible.
This was so much fun.
So fun. I feel like
We're
you
so
just
happy.
Totally filled us with information we had never heard before. Yeah. And I'm so excited for everyone to hear about it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my honor to speak up on behalf of this whole community too.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah.